Okay, we're here with Tanya Diamond. Thank you for joining me on this interview. For coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, and let everyone know what you do?
I am Tanya Diamond, as we've stated, and I've been a master life strategist for 37 years. So I help people in love, life, and money. And I also am a speaker coach and help specifically TEDx people who are wanting to get a TEDx talk that's very different than a lecture or a keynote, land those talks. And yeah, so that's why I'm here today.
Very cool. Very cool. How long have you been doing TEDx?
I've been involved in the TEDx thing. Well, I started my own journey about 5 years ago and thought, oh, I just have this idea and yay, they're going to love it. Ah! And so TEDx Rainier really took a shine to me personally,
Hmm.
but I found out, even though they were trying to help me, I couldn't actually land on a main point. I didn't understand that a message and a topic and an idea are all different things.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, even though they worked with me specifically for 6 weeks just to say, what the heck is your idea?
Hmm.
I couldn't get them an idea. So, I lost that. So, that opportunity went bye bye and came back around through a company called Thought Leader and actually learned that there are specific things on your applications that work and don't work. Became a certified speaker coach through them, though I had been helping people do speaking gigs probably for at least, I would think, like 15 years or
Oh,
before.
really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Just part of the life strategy thing. My clients will show up and sometimes I help them write books. Sometimes I help them write talks. Sometimes, yeah. So,
Oh, very cool. Very cool. For the people out there who might have just heard you say, like, there's a difference between a message, an idea, and a topic. Can you
yeah.
elaborate on that for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we get a lot of people that come in that say things like, when you say, what's your message? They go, oh, love heals all. Awesome. Love heals that's awesome. And that is more of a message. It's not an idea. So, well, how does love heal all? Well, it's just love. When you have love in your heart, then everything's okay. Okay, but how? How did we get there? And so I would say something like, what if writing a love letter to yourself for 30 days was the um, way to create self love? That's an idea.
There you go.
So, unity, if we just consciousness, if we unified with consciousness,
Hmm.
that's a message or a topic, not an idea. What if sitting still for 5 days leaning against a tree helped us become aware of ourselves? That's an idea.
That's an idea. Yeah. Wow. Let's see here. So, what was your main motivation to want to be a speaker coach?
Well, I think, I've been on stage myself since I was about 10. So I've sang in front of 20,000 people. I've entertained. I've done all sorts of different types of speaking. But I think I've always been like that. Just, somebody can say, Tanya, get on stage. Here's a mic. And I'm like, cool. What are we talking about? Type of free flow, just off the cuff, be myself type of a person.
Mhm.
But I realized that isn't everybody, right? I mean,
Right.
biggest fear, what's the biggest fear we all
Mhm.
have? Well, most people have is public speaking.
Right.
And so I realized that this is a thing for other people, like being afraid. I'm okay with being afraid and getting up there and doing it anyway, but that's me, right? That's
Right.
not how most people roll. And so I realized that there are some skills that I had that I could teach other people. One of them is how to be in your body, be scared, and use that energy to, do great things with. Two, getting out of your head. Most people try to memorize their speeches. And here's the difference too with a TEDx. A TEDx is memorized, but you can't give it like you're memorized. So,
Right. Yeah.
it's like you need to memorize your TEDx and not act like or talk like it's memorized. So that's really interesting as well. And so what can people do? Well, I think what I wanted to show people the ability to do is not only bring yourself, like you don't have to be somebody else. Like we'll go and look at TEDx talks or look at speakers and go, okay, they open their hand like watch all those videos that show you how you're supposed to gesture and how you're supposed to use the words and stuff like that. And that's all great if you're comfortable. But if you're not comfortable,
Right.
you get there and you look awkward.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've seen it. It's like, and now we're doing this. It's like, okay, we're looking pretty stage right here. And then the other thing, and that's being afraid to make a mistake, being afraid to have to take a pause. So that was the other thing is like, how do you breathe
Mm-hmm.
before you get on a stage? How do you
Mm-hmm.
breathe when you're on the stage? Because if you're in your breath, you're not in your head. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're not in your head, you embody your message. And we use these words embody. What does that mean? That
Mm-hmm.
means that you are emotionally connected
Yes.
to the message that you're giving, and therefore your audience is emotionally connected. If you're in your head and you're going to get all your audience in their head, they're going to be picking out every detail that's wrong or they don't like. If you
Right.
emotionally connect to your audience, they just are like, oh my gosh. And it gets in their cells, not just their mind. They remember the feeling they had when you were speaking.
Yeah.
You become unforgettable.
Yes. Yes. Good points.
Yeah,
And you bring up another good point where you're on stage and you're trying to uh, act like someone else. What happens there is that it takes away from your authenticity because
sure.
now you're trying to emulate someone else and how they presented instead of
Mhm.
going naturally on how you present.
Right.
You
Okay.
know.
But we don't think like, so for instance, when I talk naturally, if I'm telling a story, here, I'll give it to you.
Hmm.
This is me telling a story. Oh my God. And there was the shark. I was 80 feet down underwater and the shark's coming. He's like, "Wah, wah, wah." This is me telling a story at home. Now, we tell everybody be authentic on the stage, but guess what?
Hmm.
I can't do that on the stage because that's ridiculous. Nobody could follow me. So here is how I would present that on a TEDx stage while still being myself.
Hmm.
I was 80 feet underwater when the shark came for me. Pauses, slowing down, allowing
Hmm.
the audience to come with me versus in my living room. I was 80 feet underwater. Oh my God, it was scary as heck. So, we tell people be authentic, but be authentic in a way that the audience can also follow you.
Mm,
So, yeah, I know. It's like be embodied, be authentic. We're all like, okay, cool. I'm being authentic. Why doesn't
mm,
anybody like me? Because Tanya, you're not taking any pauses, and nobody can actually catch up with you if you're not taking any pauses.
right. Like, whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, whoa.
right, right. So, yes. And also hand gestures. Like if you authentically are scared, you are going to keep your hands closed in front of your body all the
Mm,
time,
mm,
which does close the audience up. So that blend of being authentic, but being authentically impactful and effective, that's what you're looking to achieve,
yes.
depending on the venue, right? So
Right.
I could get on a venue that's, let's say, a bunch of women that are really rowdy. We're talking about something, and I can actually speed that up a little bit and still connect to them emotionally if I'm paying attention to the audience, right?
Hmm.
If the message that I'm trying to deliver is something that has concepts you've never heard, watch my tone go down as I'm talking about them
Hmm.
so that you can keep up.
Yes. Yes, because
Right?
slowing it down actually allows the audience to lean in more
Yeah.
and pay attention. And then
Right.
when
And yeah.
oh, go ahead.
And or like asking questions. People love to ask questions. So have you ever wondered about whatever? and then start talking right away, the people are actually still wondering. They're just lost the first 5 words that you said in your next sentence. Don't ask people to wonder unless you're willing to sit back and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and man, I tell people too, like when you go out there, you're on stage, like definitely give that pause because that pause does two things. One, it allows the audience to soak in what you were just talking about. Then two, it allows you as a speaker to think about what your next topic you're going to touch up on. So for those people, right,
Yeah.
for those people who are really just up there and they're trying to remember like, oh, what's my next bullet point? What's my next? Allow the pause to give you that time, that space to just be like, okay, now I know what I'm going to talk about.
Right.
I mean, don't say it out loud, of course, but
And
let your audience soak in what you just said, and then while they're soaking it in, allow yourself to think about the next thing you're going to talk about.
absolutely. And if you're doing brain training, which I help teach my clients, that how you train your brain while you're practicing your talk is how you train your brain for when you get on the stage. You'll actually do those pauses to remember that you're changing your modulation, because one of the biggest mistakes I see people do is keep the same modular tone through their entire talk. And, that's hypnotic. So for the people in the audience, I call speed bumps. It's like da 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 da. Da 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 da. If you do that, because you've been practicing stopping at every period in your
Right.
on your script, then you will give us the speed bump effect.
Yes.
We'll just tune out and fall asleep.
Yeah.
That's why. So pauses, not only do they allow, like you said, allow people to catch up, they allow you to take a breath so you get out of your head and don't get all wound up. And they allow you to you've trained your brain that when you paused, you're about to change modulation, tone. You're in the next part of your story arc or your thing.
Oh
Because
yeah.
if you think bullet points, that would be a lecture, right? So instead of a TEDx talk, that would be a lecture or a keynote. Bullet points, if they sound like bullet points, you sound like you're listing things. We tune out after 3, people tune out.
Right.
Especially if it's like, so point 1, da, 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 point, da, 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 point 3, da, 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 da. Our brain goes, yeah, okay, it's going to be da, 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 da. Right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Then you get that wah 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 wah. Yeah.
right, exactly. So I know, and the other thing is we tend to think, in the writing part of it, we tend to think everything we have to say is so incredibly important that we like to do a revolve problem solution, problem solution, problem solution. And I'm also NLP certified and hypnotherapy certified. So when I'm writing or teaching people about this, it's like using certain cues that keep the audience engaged, not only with your voice and your energy, but actually the words you're using.
True.
If you keep revolving a problem, you go problem solution and then problem solution and problem solution. What happens is our brain keeps track of the negatives more than the positives. So you got to remember, you have one problem, nail it well, and then your solutions should keep going towards your main point, so they land on the main point as the answer. And we love to revolve the problem back in there when we do that.
Going into the next one, actually, I wanted to, for those people out there who might be listening and may have done maybe their first speaking event and bombed, or they're thinking about doing the first speaking event. Did you go over the first one you did and like the do's and don'ts that you kind of took away from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first one I did, I was 10, so we can't really, let's not. Should go back there. But here's some things that along the stages I've been on and things that I know. I also just supported my best friend in her first TEDx this last weekend.
Yeah.
I flew over to Texas to be with her. And so here are the things to know, like before you get on a stage, the things to understand is that you need to be practicing with distractions. One of the things we tend to think about, especially if you're doing, you watch a lot of videos, the front end is nothing like the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So it might look like, oh, I'm going to go on there and everything's quiet and wonderful. And, all the tech works and everything's great and stuff. So things that you're not prepared for. Number one, lights in your eyes so that you actually can't see the audience. If you're used to looking down at people in the audience, to connect with them, and you have bright lights in your eyes, you're going to be distracted by the bright lights in your eyes and your inability to connect with somebody in the audience. So practice without connecting to an audience. In fact, put on a strobe light, unless you have epilepsy, then don't.
Right.
Put on a strobe light or a big light, or have lights turning on and off, on and off, on and off. Because one of the things that happens is we tend to practice standing in a quiet space, with everything just wonderful. And that's not how things go on stage. There's people coughing on stage. There can be babies crying on stage. Tech can go out. You've got to be ready for things to happen. So practice in the airport, wander around just doing your talk in an airport, people looking at you weird, babies crying, dogs barking, whatever. If you're distracted by that, that means that you're not pro speaker yet. Right? Your microphone goes out, all of a sudden you're all flustered instead of just taking a breath, smiling at the audience, waiting for the tech people to figure
Time
it
to go
out.
a cappella, man.
Yeah, or if it's like I have a voice that I can project out there just fine. But that can throw people off, especially since we haven't trained our brains to be ready for those things. So as soon as even before your talk is memorized, get up out of your chair, get out of your desk, out from behind your desk, go find distractions, go do this in a mall, go do this on a walk, go do this when things are happening, And for my friend, we were driving and I had Siri on, and I knew she was probably pretty bulletproof, but it was interesting anyway to have Siri saying what they were doing, and I missed an exit, so there's an added stress as we're on the way to the event.
Right.
And she noted that those actually caused moments of but what she said after we got there was she got through that with that. She was pretty bomb-proof.
Nice.
And actually true. So prepare like it's going to be crazy town and not like it's all going to be perfect. All right. When you're on the stage, the things to remember is that right before you get on, you should have your pre-game right before you walk on the stage. You do not want to be going over your speech right before you get on the stage. Like if you don't know it by now, I say, if you don't know this by now, you will never know. So, yeah, right. So the thing you don't want to do is be backstage in the green room just pouring over that, because you're raising your anxiety level and you're not helping your brain at all. So what you want to be doing is being quiet, breathing, visualizing, walking onto the stage, connecting to the audience, taking that breath before you start talking, which will seem like a long time, but it won't be really. Take that breath, drop your shoulders, and then start talking, and know that your pre-game training that you've done will kick in. Because if all you've done is read the script and haven't done the breath, haven't done getting into your body, haven't trained your brain that I take a breath, and there's the first part of my talk. Take a breath, and there's the second part of my talk. That you can literally train your body and your brain to know what's going to happen next, because you've turned your shoulder a little bit, taken a breath, right? But you have to do those things. So memorization, rote memorization is not the only part of it. You can also listen. So record yourself doing your talk the way you'd want to do your talk, stick it in your ear and listen to it while you're doing other things. Like songs. How many of us know the lyrics to songs, but we didn't actually memorize the song?
Right.
Right. But once you've got it and you know it, then you put it in there and your subconscious mind will just go, oh yeah, I know that track. Right. Yeah. That's how that works. And while you're doing other things means that it's also putting it in there while you're doing other things so that you're not, like I said, sitting at that desk, looking at your thing, talk practice, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So those are the real things. And if you mess up, understand that everybody messes up. I you know, the videos we might all see are all these perfect moments and stuff like that because they've edited out all this stuff. There was a woman who literally like broke down in tears and said, I can't go on. And this was a TEDx talk. Can't go on. I don't know if I can do this. Da, 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 da. They gave her a few minutes. She started talking again, broke down at the end and walked off. If you watch her video, you can't even see that happened. So there are some instances where we're asking ourselves, like when I sing to the record. Well, in the record, there are no mistakes. Their voices are all modular, like engineered, stuff like that. And I'm holding myself to that standard that they can't even achieve when they're live.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous. So just understand that we're all humans. People get it. Nobody is expecting perfect if you're emotionally connected to what you're saying and you're emotionally connecting to the audience. That's really what they're looking for.
It's true.
That's true. Yeah. And if it's your first ever, remember, none of us are the best at our first ever things. Like I'm going to do 8 TEDx talks because, who's best at the first time they ever do anything? I don't know. I'm not. Right. I usually take a few to kind of get comfortable with things that I'm doing, right?
Right, because you ultimately you got to be able to find who you are on the stage, what you're going to present, because you're not going to know exactly who you're going to be when you get up there.
And every audience is different. Like who I am authentically depends a lot also on my audiences. Exactly. Because, if my audience is all a bunch of engineers, I've spoken to like 150 engineers that are all sitting there looking at me like,
right.
with their arms across the chest, like, who is this chick? And like, what's up with so I had to kind of meet them where they were for a moment before I broke the ice. Because if I tried to give a joke to them with them sitting there like that, it wouldn't have happened. So as you become seasoned, you start to read your audience, right? And if you insist on getting up there and just statically by rote doing what you thought you were going to do, and your audience is not in that space, you're going to be giving yourself a harder time. So that's why, like, if I go out to an audience that looks all like, yeah, we just listened to something and how are you going to be better or whatever, you can just read the room kind of thing. I'm not going to just automatically go to my funny bit, or I'm not, I might change something in that moment. And so having some fluidity within the thing that you have is something that you learn as you go, and you'll make mistakes as you go. Just so, if you're listening to this, you're a first time speaker, you haven't hit the stage yet, you're all like, oh, I've got to be perfect. Your personality is really important. Not everybody hires me. Weirdly enough, I'm not sure why. Not every hire, I don't get it. Not every group or organizer or person's going to hire me. I'm not for everybody. That's okay. Even if I can land you'd be surprised that I actually get to speak in front of, big leadership groups and multi-billionaires and things like that, as well as, because you'd be surprised what people want. But they do want something different, usually not the same thing over and over. That's why when we say lean into your authenticity, it means be comfortable with who you are.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. And that being comfortable takes time and experience. You can't expect to just do that. And if you get on a stage and you nail it the first time, and that's awesome, just understand that, there are potentials to not nail it the second time or the third time, or to make mistakes. And as soon as you start being okay with forgetting a word or making a mistake or doing something like that, the more confident you're going to be, because you know that you weathered that.
That's true.
The world didn't fall apart.
That's right. Yeah.
Nobody died. Well, I hope nobody died. I hope nobody died. Everything's going to be okay. And I bombed my first comedy debut. Everybody's told me my entire life I'm super funny, which I am, I think. And then I get up to do my first comedy debut, and it was the thing that I bombed the most in my life. I've never bombed anything that bad. So that was discouraging.
back to the drawing board, I guess.
Yeah, right, I guess it's an art form just like everything else, you know.
That's
So
so true.
yeah, the fear of failure. The reason most people are afraid of speaking is because they're afraid of looking ridiculous. They're afraid of being embarrassed. They're afraid of judgment. We're all judged all the time. Get judgment proof. Do it now,
Right.
and you'll have a much better time in life. Fully, not just speaking, but I'm in all of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go out and do things that you know that you may look foolish doing or may whatever. And the more you do that, the easier that is, the more you roll with it. And then, yeah,
So true.
yeah.
And I want to touch base on one thing. When we're talking about the audience, really get to know your audience because
Mhm.
you know the what you're going to speak on. You're not going to speak like say you go to a school of kids. You're not going to go out there and do a speech like you give to business people or vice versa, right? Like so, know your audience. Know that okay, there's things that you can do with certain audiences, and there's things that you can't do with certain.
Right. Sure, unless you're edgy. I mean, I would say that I would take a speech that I would give to kids to executives. I probably wouldn't take a speech I'd give to executive to kids.
Yeah,
but there are definitely yeah, knowing your audience means
you know what I mean. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Knowing your audience means uh one, you can look at your material and say, you know, is there a way like you know, school kids, they have short attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
You might hold the executive's attention span a little bit longer, but they kind of have short attention spans too. They just don't act like it.
Mm-hmm.
Kids act like it. So you can get flustered when you notice that the kids are bored with what you're saying. You, executives won't show you they're as bored. But it's like, but if you can entertain, I think that if you can entertain a group of kids, you can entertain anybody. This is so
Yeah,
that's how I feel
yeah,
about that, right?
pretty much, yes.
And the other thing is, even though we want to know our audiences, this might sound a little opposite, but I believe we shouldn't micromanage our audience either. So
Mm,
we make assumptions sometimes. Like I've gone and delivered to, you know, CEOs in a way that you would never expect to ever do that. Like you just wouldn't do that. You'd say, Tanya, that's insane. And yet they were so thrilled and excited to not hear the same thing delivered in the same way again. And
yeah,
so know your audience. Maybe there's words you can't use or concepts or things like that, but
exactly.
also don't micromanage your audience. Lean more back into what you want to do. That's that authenticity.
Yes.
And like I said, maybe you aren't the corporate speaker, you know, and you'll find that out. Or maybe you're a corporate speaker that's like the sleeper corporate speaker. Everybody's surprised and they hire you back because you did not do the same thing everybody else did,
Right. The sleeper.
right?
I like
The sleeper
that.
corporate speaker.
One you never thought could pull it off.
Nobody would. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And yet, because we manage that audience, we tend to tailor everything what we think. You know, it used to be that you couldn't swear on stage, right?
Mhm.
Or in marketing or anything like that.
Right.
Nobody would say stuff that was edgy, right?
Mhm.
But somebody did it. And guess what? People were like, whoa. And you know, some people were like, never. And the other people were like, oh, we want you.
Mhm.
So that's that. I'm not telling you to go swear on stage, but I am telling
Right.
you there are, I tend to be that maverick leader person that's always an innovator 5 years ahead of everything. So somebody's got to be that person, and it might be you.
Yeah.
It might be you that breaks the mold on what corporate speaking looks like. It
Mhm.
might be you that breaks the mold on, you know, what you think, you know, leadership, women in leadership want to hear. It might be you that, you know, breaks how we talk to middle schoolers.
Mhm.
So remember that too, that if you're willing to step into yourself and you're comfortable with yourself and you're willing to fail, right? Willing to be judged, willing for any of that to happen, you may find your niche that is so super solid and so super profitable, even though nobody saw it coming. And so,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, such great advice on like across the board and like everything you do. I love it. You know, like you have a lot, you can tell you have a lot of information.
The size of my hair or what?
It's fire. No.
All
But
that crazy fire stuff coming through.
yeah.
And for the audience who thinks that they're a little bit different, or the audience member there that said, I'm also autistic.
Mm,
And so, there's breaking some molds there too.
yes, yes.
So I share that because I think that, we all have different superpowers and we all have different strengths, and leaning into who you are. The world is looking for different types of people to speak.
Right.
Right. So
Yep.
maybe the fact that I say things that are completely inappropriate at times is one of my superpowers.
Yeah.
That I'm off the cuff, something, when people say about me is your audience will never be the same.
Good or bad, we don't know.
Let's not, we don't know what that, I took that as a compliment, but,
Yeah.
some people want that, the audience to be woken up in a way that, yeah. So please, as new speakers or speakers that are just going out there,
Mm-hmm.
yes, study your craft for sure, right? Especially modulation and emotional impact. Those are the two most important things. And understand that you might be somebody who could stand with closed off gestures the whole time and yet impact the audience hugely. You don't know till you experiment. And so it's all about the going out and trying things, leaning into who you are and trying it, being willing to say, yeah, that didn't work. Okay, great. Nobody's going to die. And if we just remember that, it's all an experiment in life, it's all exploration. What makes great people great is their willingness to fail, to be judged, to keep trying again. And
Okay.
that's what it is. If you don't nail it one time, that's okay. The same thing could nail it in a different audience awesomely.
True.
So manage yourself, don't micromanage your audience, and lean into whatever superpowers that you have.
True. Well, is there anything you want to offer the viewers here that have been watching?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a free video that I'd love to give you guys. And it's really about some of these concepts that we were talking about. Mainly like, how to breathe in a way that helps your nervous system optimize itself so that you get that emotional connection and impact. And a few other tips along the way there on how to train your brain pre-talk delivery and things like that.
Very cool. Very, very cool. All right. Well, I will post that up so then people can take a look at it. And yeah, so it's Tanya Diamond, everyone, and go ahead and take a look at that video and get some more, insight on what we're talking about. But thank you, Tanya, so much for coming on the summit and speaking. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Had a fun time.
All right. Well, you take care, and we'll keep in touch.
All right.
All right. Bye.